So anybody been huddling around your charcoal grill lately? Well, in Newport, we had our fire rings, and our previous council, which we love to make a huge campaign out of, to bring wood back to the fire rings. Today, the Coastal Commission approved our plan. You can now legally burn wood in the fireplaces, in the fire rings and the beach. Yes. So that was one of those great balancing acts. Here you had actually a couple of neighbors complaining. For those of you that don't know the history of it, I'll go through it very quickly. You had a couple of neighbors complaining. The previous council decided, hey, you know, that's really a good idea. Let's get rid of all the fire pits on the beach. We're just going to get rid of it. A lot of people will accuse the council and the neighbors of saying that the reason that they didn't want the fire rings on the beach was they wanted to shut the beach down at dusk because no fire rings, there's no really, a reason to be there. Some people go a little bit further and say, yeah, we wanted to keep the riffraff off the beach. But the council decided to get rid of it. They take it to the Coastal Commission because anything you do on the beach you have to get approval on. Coastal Commission, they had a guy on there that was also on the AQMD board, and he goes, you know, this is a really great idea. We ought to get rid of fires on every beach in Southern California. So they took it to the AQMD, and this is back in 2013. They took it to the AQMD. AQMD approved that summer a plan after they got all of these people on Huntington Beach, and you guys and everybody else came out of the woodwork complaining. They said, okay, we're going to say that any fire pit that's closer than 700 feet to a residence, you've got to either get rid of it or space them far enough apart, 100 feet apart, so that you don't have this impact, or you have to use an alternative fuel. Guess what? All of the fire pits in Huntington Beach were more than 700 feet away, and all the fire pits in Newport Beach were inside the 700-foot line. So we had to get rid of ours, space ours apart, use an alternative fuel or what have you. The council decided, well, gee, we don't have Coastal's approval on it yet, so they decided, let's burn charcoal. So everybody was huddling around those charcoal Weber, fireplaces, and in reality of it is the beach is shut down at dusk. The neighbors liked it because yeah, okay, maybe you can roast a marshmallow over a charcoal fire, but you really can't stay warm on a nice, the nights down in there on the beach, they're cool, they're cold. So no more bonfires, they couldn't do it. Then the new council gets elected, and the very first meeting we had, we're bringing wood back to the fire pits. We immediately put an interim plan together, spaced them apart, and put wood in most of the fire pits, had some of them in charcoal where we couldn't space them 100 feet apart, and then went through the process of the AQMD and the Coastal Commission to get approval. And literally, that was January, and now here we are in June, and we got approval. So we went from 60 wood-burning fire pits to 60 charcoal fire pits, and then today they approved 64 total, and of those 64, 24 of them will be charcoal only, and the other 40 will be wood. So again, we had that constituency. We had to satisfy the AQMD, we had to satisfy the Coastal Commission, and then we didn't want to sit there and take our residents and leave them out of it. We had to satisfy our residents. We wanted to try and keep the fire pits in the traditional historic footprint that they already were. I mean, if you move out there to Corona del Mar, and I actually offered to trade homes with some of these guys that were complaining, even up, we'll just, trade, and I'll enjoy the beach and smell the smoke. So those guys, if you move there and the fire pits were there, I understand, buyer beware, right? But now all of a sudden the fire pit was going to move to your house, then, we didn't really want to spread that footprint out and impact more homes than weren't already impacted. So that's why we came up with the combination plan. We spaced some at 100 feet. Charcoal isn't spaced. We provided some handicapped accessible ones because those are exempt from the spacing. So it is a hodgepodge compromise. Everybody wants to get into the act type of a solution. So, but in the meantime, s'mores, you're good to go. Go down to the beach, Corona del Mar, Balboa Pier, and we actually have 8 new ones that are at the dunes. So if you want to head over to the dunes, you can burn some real wood over there as well. So that was the fun stuff that really didn't make a lot of difference. When I first came into office, we did that immediately. Of course, we got a lot of people pissed off at us. And, Mensinger will tell you that, some people will tell you that if you walk out of the meeting and some people hate you, some people love you, you've done a good job, you split the baby. I don't believe that what's right is a matter of pissing off both sides equally. You want to do what's right because it's right. And if everybody in the room is pissed off or everybody loves you, you still want to do what's right. And Steve and I go back and forth on this, and that's a challenge. You know, you're doing it. A lot of people, and we've got one council person in particular, our half vote, that will look at the room and say, oh, all these people are against it. The whole community must be against it. And that's not the case. And the fire pits were a great example. You go out there and do polls, and 90% of these people want wood back in the fireplaces. 10% maybe say that they don't. But the problem is that your audience is filled with that 10%. And so it's hard as an elected official to sit there and go, you know, I'm going to piss off everybody here. Obviously the community doesn't want it. I should, you know, go back to charcoal or not have the wood in the fire pits because that's what I see out in the audience. Whereas, you know, the 90% didn't come down and complain because they expected you to do the job that they elected you to do. So now the more, let's say the bigger challenge, every year city councils have to adopt a budget. The fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30. So we actually did ours a month early. Costa Mesa is still finishing theirs. They'll finish theirs up by the end of June so that it's in place. So in Newport Beach, we had a $282 million budget we just approved at our last council meeting. That's a lot of money. Steve, what's your budget? 140 million. So we're double what Costa Mesa's budget is. Even though Costa Mesa's got 120,000 residents, we have 85. So our revenue, which is mainly based on three things: sales tax, real estate tax, and what we call TOT, or transient occupancy tax. So those guys that come and stay in all of our hotels pay a 10 or 13% tax, and we collect that as well. So our revenues went up $11 million from last year. So this next fiscal year, we're going to have $11 million more, and they're conservative usually on what they estimate, and last year we actually got more than what we estimated. But this year they're estimating that we're going to get $11 million more. And they're so proud of themselves, this is staff, because what? They balanced the budget. What does that mean? They're spending $11 million more too, so we've got a balanced budget. We're bringing in $282 million, we're going to spend $282 million. I'm shocked. Really? That the staff wants to spend all of our money? So we had set up a process with the finance committee to try and get into the details and, you know, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? One of the things that I wanted to do is give money back to the taxpayers. And so we had this finance committee that was supposed to do this, and Keith Curry is one of the existing council members, decided, and he's also on the finance committee, and he decided, yeah, we don't need to deal with that. So they didn't really deal with anything. So we're dealing with it at the city council level. So we voted 4-3 to pass this budget. This is the first time that we haven't had a unanimous vote on our budget in Newport Beach for over 30 years. We stopped looking once we got to 30 years. So, you know, that's kind of a shot across the bow for the staff. You know, hey, there's three guys here, and Duffield, Kevin Muldoon, and I are the three that voted against the budget. You know, we've got some concern here. We want to see some changes, and so they're forewarned. One of the changes that I proposed was we've got a business license tax. Now, what's Reagan's rule as far as tax? You know, if you don't want it to happen, you tax it, right? If you want more of it, you subsidize it. And if it keeps kicking, you regulate it. But in this case, we sit there and we tax businesses by the number of employees. So you get a base tax, $162, and then you get charged $16 per employee, and we have a maximum of $1,682. So I mean, most people would say employees are good, right? They help our tax base, they, you know, have jobs, they can buy houses, everybody benefits from it, but we tax them. So I propose deleting the business license tax, and let's make it a simple fee, $50 each, just to keep the database for public safety reasons. And there are a lot of cities in Orange County that don't have any business license fee or tax, right? So I'm compromising. We've got about 20,000 businesses that do business in the city of Newport Beach, so it would lower it from $4.1 million income to $1 million. You would have thought that I had suggested that, Newport Beach, fall into the ocean or something. They were shocked. Staff was shocked, kind of like, well, that means we won't be able to build that new fire station, or we won't be able to, fill in the blank. Of course, it's always, we're going to have to fire police, we're going to have to fire, the fire people, or we're not going to be able to build a new fire, or buy a new fire engine, or build a new fire station. Not, some bureaucrat up there on the second floor of our Taj Mahal, he's going to lose his job. No, we're going to lose the firemen and the police, not the bureaucrats, right? And as they sit there in their $1,100 chairs that we bought for them last year. So we're still making that fight. We lost it in the original budget. And Mensinger will tell you, he's been fighting this fight for going on 3 years now. And, it's just a different mentality. You and I will sit there from the private sector and say, well, if we want to save money here, we'll just, we're going to maintain that fire station for a couple more years, and rather than replace it this year. We're going to put off, save our money up, and then we'll build it, and we'll be okay. So I decided, you know how to spend your money better than we. We're going to let you keep some of your money in the form of, let's change this business tax, we get shot down. So then we have this other issue that the seawalls on Balboa Island, there's a couple areas on the on the island where they're in jeopardy of falling into the ocean. But they haven't done a study yet, so they don't know how much and how far. And, all it takes is when you get one of those king tides that are 8.5 feet, and the island is at 6 feet. So literally the ocean is 2.5 feet over. We're like Holland when we get those big tides. And you just need one breach, just like Katrina. The dikes on Katrina, New Orleans, you had one dike that failed. And then, of course, deluge, and the whole city was flooded. We'll get the whole island to flood. So I said, here's something that makes sense. We're going to flood the island. Let's put some money aside to actually do some repair in the seawall this year rather than later. Let's not spend this money. Yeah, that lost on a 4-3 vote, too. So those are some of the fun things that I've had being able to deal as a city council person, and you get a lot of the other details and other things that we get to do, like you guys enjoy the art. Have you guys seen the art in the Civic Center Park? I'm not talking about the bunnies now. The bunnies are playground equipment, technically. So we get 10 sculptures last year, and now we get 10 sculptures this year, and then they're going to rotate 10 every year. So they're going to come for 2 years, rotate out, and we're renting these. First 10 cost about $200 when you count the consultants and the actual money that goes to the artist. It's not actually commissioning the art. It's to pay for the artist to move it over to the Civic Center site, mount it, and then haul it off when it's done. So I suggested that we take that 10 new sculptures that we're getting and let's cancel it. Let's let the private sector pay for that. Again, the sky is falling. How dare you suggest that Newport Beach can't afford 10 more sculptures out there? And so my compromise was, okay, we'll take the 10 this year, but before we switch out the 10 for the following year, those 10 need to be privatized. You need to raise the money. So now you got 1.5 years to raise the money. So we're weaning them out. Consider it as a public sector's kind of priming the pump to see if it's something that can be successful. So if you guys haven't gone over and enjoyed the 10 sculptures that are there, they're there for another year. We've got 10 more. They're going to be christened. We're going to select them here, I guess, in the next couple meetings. And then they'll come out in September, and we'll have a little unveiling. We've got one out there now. It's called Pretty Boy. I refer to it as the pagan god. It's this big rusty metal sculpture that this guy put together on a bunch of old highway signs, and got some nice horns, a couple snouts. It really does look like it's a pagan sculpture from Inca days, except it's made out of welded metal instead of stone. So some people like that, some people don't. But if it's paid for in the private sector, okay, that's fine. I can live with that. We can provide the place and the location to display it. It can be kind of a draw from Newport Beach. One more thing, that's great. But I couldn't even get that cut. It's a year from now cut. Sandy's going to tell us who's calling here in a second. So, any questions on the fun things that are happening in Newport Beach?
I was just curious why they don't use local artists.
So the question is your local artist.
It's like, remember I went to the city council, so why don't you use a wooden boat dory that's made?
I asked the same question as far as local artists or not. The response was they submit from all over the country, actually all over the world. They do a blind jury review, no names or anything, just here's the piece that's going to come. They decide the 10 best based on that. So there's no local theme, there's no local artist. Now evidently in this next round there's a couple of them from Santa Ana, or one from Santa Ana, one from Southern Cal, not Orange County, that's in the mix that they think might make the finals, but no, it's not a local theme, it's not a local artist selection. They've actually told me that they had trouble finding guys that would do it, and they've had to call around to try and get them to do it. Because this is, you know, if you don't already have a sculpture that's done, it's kind of hard to submit it and propose it to be located. And so then on the other hand, who's going to pay them to go do it? They'd have to spec that. And the artists that have these things that they're doing, they're trying to make a name for themselves, so they're using that as, hey, look, it's on display over Newport Beach. It's been there for 2 years. You know, who wants to buy it? And, you know, or commission me to build something else.